Jordan Moore, Keely, Eure, and Max Browne. Double dose of football roundtable this week, as there's plenty to get to. I wanted to spend the first segment of it really diagnosing what happened in the Utah game, and I'll start you with an unanswerable question, but your take. Does USC win that game if Caleb Williams never gets hurt?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, not to plug the podcast, but I talked about this with Dion Bailey on
the podcast.
Plug
that podcast. You know, I plug it all the time. I want you to know that.
I appreciate it.
Big fan, long time listener.
And you've been on it.
Yes, one time, and just probably the least successful.
Re-listening his own episode.
Yeah,
probably the least successful one. It was where I told everyone that USC was going to be the best shooting team in the country, and they have been an abysmal shooting team.
We did get some hate mail about
nailed
that.
it. Yeah, nailed it.
But no, I think it was one of those things, and Dion made a great point where, you know, Shane Lee said coming into the week, Caleb Williams is the heart and soul of this team. And personally, I was like, we knew that, but how much did we know that until Friday happened? And I feel like it was the first time you saw the team they had so much fight in them, and they still did, but you could tell that self-belief kind of just caved in as the game went along. And even still, it was close at the fourth quarter, which it just felt like an insurmountable mountain at a certain point, but Caleb Williams was still fighting. And yeah, so long story short, yes, I do think they win if Caleb's healthy.
Yeah, you got the sense that everyone's looking around, waiting for someone to make a play or waiting for Caleb to make a play.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds you a little bit of Darnold in 17, a little bit of guys.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, guys looking around, waiting for him to spark it, and then everyone gets confident in that regard. And it was funny. I was taking a step back, kind of looking at the conference of, where was I right, where was I wrong in terms of preseason projections. And in a way, this is the conference game that we projected back in August of USC, Utah, and USC's not going to have the horses up front to win. And it's funny because that's not what we were saying the week before, because the dynamics had changed. Obviously, USC was the favorite going to that game. But in a weird way, that's the story that we almost expected 4 months ago, in that, all right, we knew Utah was going to be a really good football team, and we knew we were susceptible from a front seven perspective if our depth was called upon, and that certainly came out.
I guess it's confusing, though, because it's the complete opposite of the game in Salt Lake City. Because I looked this up, too, before it. I have the rushing stats here. In the game in Salt Lake City, USC won the rushing battle 175-138. In this game, it was 223-56 for Utah. So our whole pregame show was about Dalton Kincaid, because when he played a team a second time, you look at the first game and go, what was the problem? They shut down the run in the first game. In this game, they just couldn't.
But it was interesting, though, statistically you're right, but the feel of the game, USC jumping out to an early lead. I remember I was on my couch like, all right, this is going to be a blowout. All right, let's go. CFP. Yep. And the game in Salt Lake, similar deal. USC gets out in a hurry. You almost expected them to get slow and warm up to the game. That wasn't the case. But Utah, credit what they're doing. They take that first punch or two, and then they buckle down, and they won the second quarter and dominated the third.
Yeah, a lot of people got pretty confident towards the first quarter, second quarter, and I kept thinking this is exactly how the first one played out. And it's funny that you mentioned looking to Caleb. I thought that was kind of the development. Once Travis Dye went down, you realize how young that offense is. And I think Caleb, to his credit, took some of that maturity that was needed to direct guys. And then once he goes down, you're like, wow, these are really young people. And Austin Jones isn't young, but he was kind of a newer face coming on at the end because Travis Dye was injured. But it just I felt like the offense didn't really have anyone to look to. And then you have, the offensive line is banged up, probably playing one of their worst games on the right side. And you're just like, it was just a confluence of things that they just ultimately couldn't overcome.
Yeah, and the popular take from the I've been waiting all season for this take crowd is knew this defense was eventually going to keep us out of it. But again, I look at it and I go, in the first game up in Salt Lake City, the defense got 3 stops and forced 1 field goal attempt, which Utah missed. In this game, the defense got 4 stops and forced 2 field goal attempts. It was pretty similar, if not better. There were just way more offensive possessions for Utah because the USC offense was going 3 and out, which we obviously just didn't see. And the offense changed the game for the defense, and the defense kind of is what it is. I guess what I'm saying is they had overcome these defensive deficiencies all season, and there's no reason they couldn't if they had been able to do what they could do offensively, which they just did not in this game.
Yeah, they knew. I think everyone knew the deficiencies, and they had a winning formula, which was either going to take away or 3 and out. I mean, that's
which they got to take away.
Yeah,
and they had another ball on the ground that they didn't cover.
Yeah.
But so and the guy we had on, Bryson Shaw, was real close to 2 picks in the game too, and Mackay almost got a pick. So the defense had its hand on the ball. It just didn't get 3-4 takeaways. But
and to your point, have we seen this offense go 3 and out consecutively like we did against
never.
on
They
Friday?
Didn't have a first down in the third quarter. There was nothing across the season outside of the Oregon State game that even compared to what we saw.
Yeah, it's manageable, this defense and their deficiencies. It's manageable when you have an offense that's led by Caleb Williams. Yes, and obviously that didn't happen.
Yeah, third down was atrocious, but I also think what's frustrating too is that's a good Utah offense. That's not a great Utah offense. That's their third string running back, quarterback to start the year. It's we talk about Kincaid. Brant Keithy was their go-to tight end to start the season, so Kincaid wasn't even their go-to guy. It's receivers that aren't really going to get after you. So that's maybe where the growth is of, hey, offense had a bad night from USC. Moving forward, it'd be, hey, this is an opportunity for the defense to pick things up on their own, knowing that it's not an elite offense you're going up against.
I was listening to Scott Mitchell, who is the color commentator for the Utah broadcast. I was listening to him interviewed this morning, and one thing he said that stood out to me was he said, what I've learned over the years is that to win championships, the key is depth. And that Utah, when they were losing some of these title games, they had sort of worn out by the end of the year. And the last couple of years, now they have the depth so they can lose some of those people and win. It stuck out to me because you mentioned that the offensive line really had a tough game for an offensive line that had been really good all year. And what stood out to me is, and they had done this at times this year, but against weaker opponents, USC lost one player in Andrew Voorhees and had to make 3 changes on the line. You have to move 2 guys and bring in another guy. You don't have the depth to just go, we got another guard. Don't worry about it. You think Andrew Voorhees is good? Wait till this guy, coming up. He's younger, but he's just as talented. They didn't have that, and then all of a sudden, it just did not look like communication was as good. And obviously, Caleb's sitting back there in a different way, but that's depth.
Yeah, and to this current coaching staff's defense, if you will, that's not their guys. That's recruiting deficiencies
year one
of
in
years
general.
before. Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be a tall task, too, with the portal era where you can lose that backup in a hurry. One thing that Kyle Whittingham has done a really good job is guys aren't looking to shop around to the next school. Yep. Can Lincoln do that moving forward with, hey, you can have the starters, right? Love the go-to guys, but can you get the backup guy to buy in and stick around for the back end of his career?
Yeah, you really need about 10 offensive linemen is what most coaches say that you really trust. I think USC had 7 this year that they really trusted, and so certainly a spot that they'll want to add depth to in this offseason. Jordan Moore, Keely Eure, Max Browne. Talking about the Cotton Bowl, that's where USC's headed. The game is in Arlington, not Dallas. I've already been corrected on that. In the big AT&T Stadium where the Trojans have not had a whole lot of success so far. 0-2 in that stadium, so see if they can end the House of Horrors. The game is January 2, as we mentioned earlier. It's a noon kickoff in the local time zone, which is Central, so 10 a.m. out here in the Pacific time zone. What's your big storyline? The way that when you guys saw the matchup pop up on Sunday, what was the first thing that came to mind?
I think it's the turnaround bowl, if you will. Both teams did not have good records in 2021, and this is the chance to kind of show what you were able to do in 2022. Obviously, I think it's more miraculous for a school like Tulane. USC more returning to where they should be and have been, but that was kind of the first thought that came to my mind.
Yeah, for me, it's narrative. I think if USC were to drop this game, then you're not limping at the finish line, you're falling at the finish line. And I think the buzz going into the offseason changes. I think it would still be exciting and people would be obviously pumped for next year, but it changes. I think look no further than what Oregon's done this year. I mean, they were having the season that everyone had hoped for and things were great. Then you lose to Washington and then it's all, we'll pick things back up against Oregon State, and they lose that game as well. And now people are, not pleased with the season, and it changes your outlook there. And I think and we've talked about this a few times on this show, Lincoln continues to remind us and remind fans how far we've come. I think we can't lose sight of that, but it does change if we don't take care of business and don't show up against Tulane.
Yeah, and to that end, I don't believe Lincoln Riley or coaches feel this way, but I kind of view this game more as the first game of next season than the last game of this season, and just in the sense that I think the story more coming out of it is the momentum, is a young player that pops in the game, is just a general good feeling of the program, and breeding that positivity going into year 2, as opposed to some sort of capstone on year 1. I think the capstones on year 1 were Notre Dame and UCLA knocking off your rivals. I mean, those were the moments that we're going to pull out from this season, and this sort of gives you the springboard. If you play well, it gives you the springboard into next season.
To me, it's a chance to, it's not just a buzzword to say culture, like establish the culture and show that we can respond. A national narrative that's out there is that, USC was mentally tired after UCLA and Notre Dame. I don't believe that. I don't sense that in that game. But this is an opportunity for USC to respond and say, hey, no, we are a team that's going to respond and not cakewalk to the end of the season and not show up because Tulane's not a Power 5 team. It's an opportunity to say, you know what, we didn't have our best night against Utah, but don't forget about us. We're going to be here every single weekend in 2023.
Yeah, and I think it's a pride thing too, and just a respect thing. If we learn anything about Lincoln Riley, he's very much one to be like, you take care of the things you need to take care of, take everything seriously, and it doesn't matter if there's transfer portal and different things happening, and the Utah game was kind of the end of the season, quote unquote. You still have to show up and play, and I think they take evaluation very seriously, even when it comes to the bowl game. And so I think if you're a player on this roster, you still have a shot to prove yourself, and like you said, Jordan, prove yourself for next season.
And the big story, sitting here next to our team reporter, the number one story over the next 3 weeks will be, did Caleb practice? What's his preparation like? Is Miller Moss going to be the quarterback in this game? We obviously don't know a whole lot of that now. I think Caleb's telling people I'm going to play, but, he's not the first player I've ever heard who said I'm going to do it. I'm like Wolverine, I can heal myself. And Lincoln Riley's was a little bit more, hey, he wouldn't play if we were playing 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks, so we'll see about 4 weeks. But that's obviously a huge story going in his preparation if he's playing at all. Yeah,
and Riley had his Cotton Bowl presser yesterday. He said it's a severe hamstring injury. And the thing with hamstrings, too, is that they're so fickle. Like, they take a while, and a little thing can tweak it and set you back. So, in my opinion, I don't think Caleb plays. I think we see Miller Moss. Now, that's not to say that Caleb will not try to play. I'm sure that he will do everything he can to do that, but I think we see Miller Moss.
Yeah, and, again, what his preparation is, and, you don't want to put him out there on one leg again, going into a big spring, a big year next year,
too. Got a lot of reps ahead of him if it is Miller Moss. It's 3 full weeks of practice, 2 full weeks of practice.
15 practices, so that would be good, certainly. And our over-under, guys, 1.5 for Caleb's Heisman chances. So will Caleb finish first or not?
Max, take it away.
1.5. So I'm taking the
1 is the under. 2
I am taking the
over.
Under. It is Caleb Williams' award to lose. If he does lose it, it will be a flat-out shocker. And I even think it's not even like a West Coast revolt thing like a Christian McCaffrey. It would be a college football revolt of what are we doing here, guys? It's Caleb Williams' award.
See, okay, I have trust issues for the aforementioned Christian McCaffrey vote or lack thereof. I don't know. I think he should win the Heisman, but will these voters be swayed by Friday and, quote unquote, the nails and all the things that have become the national storylines rather than, he led this team to the historic run that they've been on?
Is there an answer somewhere in there?
I was hoping the producer would tell us.
You're literally running out the clock.
He's going to win it, yes.
It's a good thing Georgia and Michigan don't have some statistically comparable guy in there because that might.
Georgia even getting a finalist was surprising.
What about Hooker? That was weird.
I would have put Michael Penix in there. Trojans Live is a production of USC Sports Properties and Playfly Sports. Our executive producer is Drew DeHart. Producer is Rick Cutler. Who we have back in the studio? Art Webb. Thank you, Gia Lares. Thank you to our crew behind the scenes. We appreciate you all. Everyone have a great Monday and fight on.